So another hobby video today, and I'm going to share how I kitbashed a chronomancer out of the spare part from the pariah nexus kit for my Necron 40k army. So as ever, a typical YouTube comment, like, comment, subscribe if you're enjoying what I do, and hopefully you'll see more of my videos. So the chronomancer, I built up the one that comes in the pariah nexus set, lovely model, and you get left with a number of spares. So you get a spare left arm because it's an alternate fit, you get a different staff, and you get three different heads of the model, so you end up with two spare. So that put me in a thought of, right, what can I do to utilise these things and not let them go to waste. Now if you expanded your Necron army, like I have, I bought the basic Indomitors set and I expanded with that buying the Recruit Edition starter sets, because you get, for £3 more than a standard Necron box set, you get, you know, Royal Wardens, some Marines, etc. So it's the best way of really expanding your army. But you will get left with spare Royal Wardens, because again, you can only use one for your army. Now I built this guy up, I didn't really have a plan for what to do with him and thought, right, it's time to sacrifice. So I want to get rid of his legs, just using a pair of side cutters. A bit brutal, it was catapulted off the room. So I remove the legs at the hip joint, I'm doing there, to try and leave some of the hips and the lower part of the torso left later, which you'll see. Now before we go hacking away at the right arm, it's important to try and work out how it's going to join onto the model. And you'll see there the sort of ball joint, the little circular ball joint just on the wrist. We want to keep that because that is what will mesh in with the staff when we go on. Similar thing to the left arm, so before cutting, just sort of looked at how that will attach, and you can see that that's got the ball joint section on the piece we're going to use, so you can cut off slightly higher. So it's important to do that before we start randomly hacking at the model. Try and work out where we're going to put these extra pieces on. Now obviously we can alter things later and change if we need to, but the less bad cuts you make now, the less work you're going to have to do later to to fix it up. So comparing the two models together, when you look, the actual torsos of the models are fairly similar in terms of their size. The way the chronomancer goes big is he's got something built up onto his shoulders, which we won't be doing, so his tendrils are quite long. So when we're building these tendrils later, it's important to try and balance the size of the model, which you'll see. Now I'm going to make some tendrils and I need somewhere to affix them to the model, so now I'm just trimming down the hip joint. So I'm not completely removing it, so we're leaving almost the spine of that section still onto the model, so we've got something to attach the tendrils to when we build them later. So you can see equivalent kind of sizes. Now I'm not going to make tendrils that long, as I've just said, because it won't match. So next thing is to remove the head. Now there's some very useful kind of, I don't know what you'd call them, power cable coming from the back of his head and support struts that kind of come from the cheek down into the shoulder. So I'm just using a hobby knife and cutting very carefully, cutting to the tops of those so that I can remove the head and still use those tendrils and support struts, which I've done. So I've glued the spare chronomancer head on there, quite like the effect. Glued the left arm on. You can see nothing too drastic in there, no conversion, it's simple gluing on, and you can see where the left hand will go on eventually onto that ball joint, but I'm not going to glue this on until we've actually made the bottom half of the body. So what we're going to use here is a tentacle roll maker from Green Stuff World. Now this is a really useful piece of kit, but you don't have to use it, and I'll talk you through in a minute about what you can do if you don't want to pay 10-12 quid for a little bit of kit to do tendrils with if you're only doing it for like a single project. So before you start working with this, I've mixed up the green stuff. I've left it to kind of dry for a bit, for about 20 minutes, just to lose some of the stickiness. And then to stop it sticking down to the surface, I've put some parchment paper onto my little desk, sellotape that down, and then just give it a light coating of Vaseline, and it just stops it sticking to your surface, because making green stuff, as you know, it will stick to things quite readily. So what I'm going to start with is make a number of almost sausages, make some little rolls, some basic tendrils without any detailing in, and roll it on the table, roll it between your fingers, make it whatever size you like. Now I'm going to roll these into a size that I think will go from the waist to whatever base I'm going to use and support the model well enough. You could make these things really, really long. If you do, you're going to have to structurally support them somehow. I've found when making sort of tendrils or making things green stuff, up to maybe an inch or two, it will start to support the weight of a model, as long as you use a few of these. If you go longer, it won't. So if you want to make your chronomancer really tall off the ground, you will need to support this by either putting a bit of wire through the middle of the green stuff roll, which you can do by, when you're at that stage, just slice down the side, drop that in, close it back up again. So now using the green stuff roller, so we've made the sausage, put some Vaseline onto either side of the ridges of the green stuff roller. You put it in between, roll it back and forth, and that's what you make. Now, if you haven't got a green stuff roller, you can do this exact same effect with a comb, because all you're looking for is a ridged surface. So a ridged surface that you can roll that bit of green stuff back and forward on. Now, it does take a bit longer doing it on a comb, because obviously you've got to be a bit more gentle with it, and it's not rubbing both sides at once, but it's perfectly doable, and that's what I did for a number of years before buying one of these pieces of kit. So don't feel that you can't do this technique. So I've made, as you can see there, quite a few of these tendrils. Now it's a case of attaching them to the model. So super glue onto that torso piece that we've left sticking out, and then take tendril and glue it on. Now, I've used on all these tendrils, there'll be one side that you're not quite as happy with as the other, or it hasn't quite done as well. So I'm trying to get if there's an end that doesn't look as good as the other, that's the bit I'm gluing onto the waist, so you won't see it. And if there's a side that I think that side's not quite as good as the other, then I'll try and hide that side onto the model. So it's not about making every tendril perfect when you do them, because you very much can't. It's very fiddly. The bit of shot I showed of me making a tendril in that green stuff roller, I think I shot that about 8 times because only one shot went absolutely perfect. So that's the one we show, obviously. But a bit of patience, they won't all be the same. Now, work around the model and glue these tendrils on. So by this time now, they've had probably about 35 to 40 minutes this green stuff has been mixed for. So the longer in the curing process you leave it, the easier it is to actually do this side, and the less chance there is if you'll end up with fingerprints on it, or damage, or losing too much of the detail. So what you don't want to be doing is trying to get to this stage within about 10 minutes of doing it, because your fingers and picking up these green stuff tendrils, you will end up kind of damaging them. It's a tricky kind of balance, because you leave them for too long, they start becoming sort of unmanageable and start going solid, which obviously we don't want. But do it too quickly and they'll still be quite sticky and whatever. Keep Vaseline on your fingers, keep some Vaseline onto the sculpting tool, whatever it is you're using to prod them into place. But you've just got to kind of get that balance, and that'll come with experience of using green stuff. And look, if anyone is interested in the comb technique of making these, look, drop it into the comments and I can try to do a very quick 30-second kind of video about how to do it with a comb, although it is identical to doing it with the green stuff roller. It's making the sausage of the green stuff, like I said before, Vaseline in the comb, and then just gently rolling it onto a comb, or you could find any ridged piece of equipment basically. So we've gone right there around the model, and we've now got the tendrils there, and as you can see, they're quite pliable at this moment, so they're secured to the waist of the model, and when you look at the base where they're going to touch onto the base, you can see they're quite manoeuvrable, they're quite flexible at the moment, because they're sort of 40 minutes into the curing process. Now at this stage I kind of decided that I didn't like the cloaky bit that hangs off his left arm. Wasn't too keen on it, so I kind of put a little couple of nicks in and just removed that from there, because I wanted to actually have the tendrils kind of more showing. So again, you can make these mistakes and decisions as you're going through the build, and I wanted his left arm quite close to the body there, to keep it kind of not quite as dynamic a model, because I don't see this guy as being my head chronomancer. He's kind of slightly more junior chronomancer, slightly less flashy, so I want to keep the model quite compact. You might want to turn it the other way and have him holding it way out to the side, and you can alter that on based on your desire of what you want your conversion to look like. So now it's about trying to fit it onto the base. Now you could obviously have the tendrils just touching the very bottom of the base, just the very end of the tendrils, and it could be quite a tall model. I wanted him to be fairly shorter, quite a lot shorter than the official Chronomancer model. So I just kind of started to have a play now and think, right, where am I going to have the tendrils? What am I going to do? How am I going to bend them out? And they, again, are quite pliable. Now what you want to do though, is keep a clump of them fairly close together, because that'll give you a bit more structure. And I completely forgot to video this part of it. This is how I supported it overnight while it dried. You can see, folded the tendrils to position where I'm happy with, and then supported the model, because until they set properly, obviously it won't take the full weight and they'll sink down. So I just used a couple of sculpting tools under his armpits and propped it on something, left it to dry overnight, and then this is what we get. So the tendrils are set in a position I'm happy with, and will now fully support the weight of the model. Now with his staff, I decided I didn't want it just in his left arm, in his right arm, sorry, going to the right hand side. I wanted it crossing the body. So I'm going to stick it across ways like that, and I've stuck a little tendril onto the part of the model where there's a plastic tendril already attached, and I've got a spare tendril that I'm going to glue into where I've left the folds quite open as like an additional kind of tendril coming out. Now, given that I've glued the staff across the body, I think what I would have done originally, if I'd have realised that was how I was going to mould it, is made the tendril that I've got coming off that staff a lot longer, because I'm ended up having to now join kind of two tendrils together, which isn't the cleanest of ways of doing this. And when I've done it, you can see the join line. So what I've then done is, because I do a flayed one effect on my necrons, I've just put some of that flayed skin across that join line, so you don't really see it. But I think if I was doing it again, I'd probably do a whole length of tendril. So now I'm on to making it match the rest of my necron army with the kind of flayed skin onto it, and I'm using milliput for this. If you want to see how I do this exactly, my Necron Warrior video goes into a bit more detail. But again, same thing, using that parchment, putting the milliput onto that Vaseline area, and using the tool just to slide it up, and it slides up quite nice and easy, as you've seen there. So I'm now detailing this model with that, so it will match into the rest of my army. I've done the other chronomancer, you can see on the table there as well, into that scheme, and he's now on a base that I've used the Green Stuff World roller for, to again make it match the rest of the army, make it match the Necron theme. So that's the completed model. I won't obviously show the colour scheme how I painted it, it's very similar to the Necron Warrior colour scheme, so drop onto there and have a look. But this is the Pariah Nexus Core Chronomancer, and here's my Kitbashed Chronomancer, which I actually think I prefer more than the Pariah Nexus one. I think he fits in really well. Really happy with the conversion. I hope you all like it. I hope someone out there might give it a go and be inspired. So if you do like what I'm doing, like, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz, and I'll see you next time.